Good morning, everyone. Let us begin by taking a few breaths, shall we? So, exhale, take a deep breath in, and let go. Another deep breath in, and let it go. One more deep breath, and let go. And so, good morning again. I want to begin by saying thank you for all of our collective prayers and manifestation. Jason and I found our place to live. I moved in 2 nights ago. And I am just in awe of what we are capable of creating together. I just want to say that, I have been repeating this idea for a while that we really believe in the power of collective consciousness, that when we all put our ideas, when we all put our minds together, when we all focus on the same thing at the same time, something more becomes available. And I just have to tell you that the house that y'all manifested for Jason and I was more than we could possibly have imagined, and I can't wait to have a housewarming and invite you all over to come see it. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So thank you. Quite the demonstration for all of us. So this morning, our talk title is There is a Place for You at Our Table. I love the alignment. I now have a table to invite you over to. So I want to begin with, I have 2 quotes to start this morning. I have one from Ernest Holmes, and then I have one from Jean Houston. And you may not see how this ties into our talk title, but we're going to get there in a minute. So we're going to start with a quote from Ernest Holmes. This is one of my favorite messages from the Science of Mind textbook. And he says that some draw upon one type of knowledge and some another, all from the same source, the source of all knowledge. The scientist discovers the principle of their science. The artist embodies the principle of the spirit of their art. The saint draws Christ into their being. All because they have courted the particular presence of some definite concept. Each state of consciousness taps into the same source, but has a different receptivity. Each receives what they ask for according to their ability to embody. The universe is infinite. The possibility of differentiating is limitless. One of my favorite messages from Ernest Holmes talking about the fact that we all draw from the same source, but each one of us is a unique and specific channel for a particular way that the divine shows up in the world, right? So now we're going to move to Jean Houston. This is from her new book, The Quest of the Rose, that she co-wrote with a woman by the name of Annalise Smitzman. And they tell us to imagine and connect with the future possibilities that call you forth. Enter into these greater possibilities with your imaginal powers. When you do this, they receive a place in our world. You become the place for their manifestation in this world and time. Your imaginal powers are the key to your mental fertility. Make your explorations sensory rich. See them, smell them, feel them. That way, the future becomes our power for renewing and evolving ourselves and the world. Okay. So, Ernest Holmes is telling us that each one of us is a particular, unique channel for creation to happen. Right? That you have your uniqueness, you have your beliefs, you have all of your gifts and talents and all that makes you you with your unique perspective on reality. It's through all of that that the infinite spirit is creating your life all the time. And some of us are artists, and some of us learn this way, and some of us express that way, and we have our unique authenticity that we are constantly living. But then Jean Houston gives us advice on how to take that and how to take it a step further. And she says, okay, there's a you that is the unique channel that you are channeling into the universe, whether you're the scientist, the artist, or the mystic, right? It's a specific channel. But then she says, tap into the future. Tap into the lure of who that you are is being called to become, and wake that future in your consciousness. But not only wake it up, recognize that there's a particular pathway that's calling you, and dive into it with all of your senses. Dive into it with the powers of your imagination. Because again, only you can imagine what you can imagine. And so to recognize that we are working with a powerful source that is the field of possibility, that is the ground of all being, that is the infinite source of all things. And yet we are finite beings. Each one of us can only create that which we can create. Right? If we come into this experience to be the individuals that we are. You know, I've said many times, if we wanted to experience bliss and oneness and allness and the infinitude of all that is, we would have stayed in God. We came here for the experience. We came here to be our unique, individualized selves that comes with the whole path that was yours to take. And to recognize that on that path is the whole spectrum of good, of bad, of up and down. I gave a talk for CSL Santa Fe yesterday, and one of the things that I told them is that there's a reading from the Foundations class. There's this beautiful poem, and there's one line in it that says something to the effect of, "I have come here for everything from terror to ecstasy." That we come here for the full breadth of the life experience, but to recognize that it's ours. And that the choices that we make, the images that we choose to hold in our mind, as Gene Houston's saying, tap into a future and then let it wake up in your imaginal powers. And when you do, you give it a home in this world. And I've probably told some of you this, but here's how you make a sensory-rich experience. So Jason and I have been looking for a place to live for a while. And many of you know that we've been looking for a number of months. And about 6 months ago, I found this beautiful antique vintage Chinese china set that was just absolutely beautiful, hand-painted, gorgeous. We may have gone a little crazy and found all that exists on the internet, and we have a fabulous china set. But I digress. The thing about the china set is that we bought this china set for our new life together. And we began, every time we would check in on the phone or we'd visit each other, we'd spend some time and we'd say, "Can you imagine our china set on our table? Can you imagine sitting at the table together, having a meal or having someone over on these beautiful plates?" And then we started to close our eyes and say, okay, what does the kitchen look like? What does it feel like when we're in that room? When you walk into the next room, what does it look like? When you walk outside, what do you see? Do you smell the redwoods? Is there incense burning? Can you smell us making coffee in the morning? And we would do this regularly, but every time we'd start with the china set. We'd zoom in on this one thing that was real, that we had in our house, and then began to zoom out into the future, into the possibility, into the life that we were calling in. And that practice made it so alive for us, so vivid, so real. And then what showed up was more than what we could have imagined. Right? And that's the practice that we really want to be cultivating for ourselves in this thing that we call the science of mind. Is the practice of cultivating a reality in our mind before it happens that is so real that we believe it. Because everything is created first in thought and then in existence. And what Jean said in her quote from the book is that when you use your imaginal powers and you awaken an image in your mind, you become the place through which now it begins to come into the world. And so what would it look like for each one of us to begin to recognize that we are each a unique center of creation? And we call this place the center for spiritual living. But what I want to have each one of us think about is, what if each one of us is a center for spiritual living? Each one of us is a center of spiritual living. Each one of us is living a spiritual life. Recognizing that our thoughts, that our beliefs, that our choices, that our behaviors, that all the patterns that we walk through the world are creating our circumstances. And the word circumstance simply means the circle around which you are standing. So each one of us is a center for spiritual living, and we have our circumstances that we are spiritually living in everywhere that we go, if we so choose. Because here's the thing, the universe is going to create no matter what. The universe creates by default. It just does. There's a whole universe of things happening out there. Some of it's beautiful, some of it's interesting, but it's all happening. The choice point is the choice point. It's what we choose to focus our attention on that continuously grows in our mind, which then grows in our expectation, which then we start to see around us. But we first have to drop into the awareness that each one of us is connected to a source, that each one of us is connected to something greater than we are. Because that's where it all comes from. And the thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and noticing a lot recently, is how much gratitude continuously perpetuates there being more to be grateful for. I keep finding myself laughing and crying because I'm so happy about my life. I find these moments where I walk into this building and tears just kind of fall out of my eyes some days. Or I'm walking through the space, or I walk up to my new house and I just start giggling. Because I'm noticing that there's something taking place in this experience for me of spiritual living. And I realized that since I committed to this role in this circumstance as the minister of this community, something dramatically shifted. And I started to look back and I go, what is it? And I realized that I'm kind of like praying 5 times a day because we have a lot of meetings around here. Every meeting starts with prayer. And I find that by the end of the day, by the 4th or 5th or 6th meeting or phone call that I've had, I've prayed 5 times over the course of the day. And I'm realizing, that's a really good idea. And so the thing I want to invite you to is I'm witnessing for myself that the deeper I step into this feedback loop, this perpetual motion machine of creation on purpose, the more that it activates itself in my life. And I really attribute it to the fact that I'm praying so often, and that every couple hours something comes up in this community where I'm invited to return myself to this idea that God is all that there is, that I am one with that thing, that it's creating through me as I speak, and that I perpetually have more to be grateful for, and therefore I can trust and let go. And the more that I do that, I feel that there is a current that I am part of, something that is moving with me, moving me. And we say in our prayers all the time, there is a power for good in this universe greater than we are, and it can use us. But I think that the practice is continuously bringing ourselves back to that place of awareness, of using the tools, of being in prayer, of being in meditation. I know that Reverend Tamara has been doing her spiritual YouTube TV thing she's been telling you about for a while. And I've been talking to her more and more, and I noticed that as she tells me, as she sits day in and day out and stops watching regular TV and only watches Joe Dispenza and Michael Beckwith and Debbie Ford and all of the great New Thought teachers, what happens? The feedback loop of perpetual motion of what's going on in your head is being fed by that which you want to be focusing on, right? And so whether it's the media you choose or the amount of times a day you pray or whatever it is, recognize that it is the redirection of your consciousness that is what this whole philosophy is about. And in that redirect is the opportunity to allow the truth and the authenticity of the uniqueness of who you are to create in the world, to create your life, and to create the world. Because what if the whole existing world around us is just a hologram of our collective choices, of our collective attention? But there's 7, almost 8 billion of us projecting into the hologram. But let us recognize that there's power in that collective projection. That what groups of people focus on has more power than what an individual focuses on. And so the thing that I want to say about this community, about this place, Center for Spiritual Living Santa Cruz, is that we are deepening into a new way of being. That we have a lot bubbling up and unfolding here that many of you know about, and there's more to come. But the thing that I want to invite us into is to be a community of people who are doing our individual work together. One of my favorite books, it's a novel, it's called The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk. How many of you have read it or heard of it? Oh, we're going to have to do a book club. There's a line in that book where they're developing a strategy for nonviolent resistance against an upcoming threat. And the people in this world live in a sort of utopic sort of environment where they have everything they need. And everyone outside of their community is struggling, and there's sort of two worlds living parallel to each other. And so it's the invaders who are coming in who want to shut down this sort of utopic world. And what the people in that society decide to do as their strategy when the enemy, in quotes, when the enemy comes through their gates, is to say, there's a place for you at our table if you would choose to join us. That these people who are hungry, that these people who are under the control of the government or the military or the corporations or whoever they are, come into this place where everyone has enough food, where everyone is thriving, where everyone is living in their authentic expression. And they say, you could have a place at our table as well. You can come destroy this, or you can have some of this. And I realize that the magic about this teaching and being part of a community like this is that we all have these beautiful experiences of the way that Spirit has shown up in our lives, of the magic that is available, of the shift and the evolutionary change that can take place when we participate in it. What if our lives, what if what was happening here was such an example that when the people we interact with ask us why our life is so magical, why our outlook is so true or positive or loving, we can invite them in and say, you know what? There's a place here at our table. Come join us. Come feast on what we have to offer. Come participate in the gifts and the mutual sharing that is happening here. And so let us realize that if each one of us recognizes the power that we have to create and the power of our mind to redirect our focus and be authentic, true creators in this world, then we can begin to build something that sets the example for the world around us about how to live in harmony with life, how to live in alignment with the truth of who we are. Because what I see around us is a whole lot of people who are struggling, trying to find what harmony or balance could even look like, who may not even be able to see it at all. And here we have a place that says, you know what? Come get grounded. Come be reminded of the truth of who you are. If you're not ready to pray 5 times a day, at least come be reminded of the truth once a week. Bring someone into this space who needs to hear it, and let them know that there is a place for them at our table. And so if you will, take a deep breath in. As I invite my practitioners and ministers to stand and surround the room and hold this space with me, Anthony's going to come play the piano. Take another deep breath. And so as we breathe, my friends, let us once again remember that we are being breathed by something greater than ourselves. That each one of us is part of the great seamlessness, the great wholeness. Some of us refer to it as the universe or as energy or consciousness or God. Let us remember that we could speak 1,000 names, and each one of them is only an arrow pointing to something greater than we can comprehend. And yet that something, that infinite being, that great creative power, it is the source of who we are. It is breathing us. And that infinite field of possibility is funneling itself into this world through each one of us, through our unique gifts and interests and talents and ways of thinking and doing. Each one of us is a unique place where the universe is showing up like it never has before. And we are a people who have the ability to focus our attention into that even more and invite that spirit to create at a new level and say, use me. Be a place where something new is happening in the world. Let each one of us remember that we are centers of spiritual living, that we can live lives that are the example of how it works, so that we can share that with the world. We have a great and powerful vision of a world that works for all. Let each one of us begin with our own lives and find the way to make them work. Find a way to thrive. Find a way to live and move and have our being as if we recognize that the Spirit of the living God is speaking through us, seeing through us, acting through us, choosing, creating, evolving in us in every moment. And so I just speak a word for each person in this place, knowing that even now, each one of us is waking up to the greater possibility of who we are and who we could be, recognizing that there is a future, that there is a self, that there is a call and a lure of becoming that is saying, come, be me in every moment. And it pulls on us. And our world is begging for something new to emerge. Let us be a people who can vision it so powerfully, awaken what's possible in our minds, activate it with our imaginations, and bring it into the world of form. Let us be grateful that we have each other to lean into, to remind us of the truth of who we are. And so in this moment, I surrender. Let us just let go, knowing that there is a current, that there is a motion, that there is a flow of good that is always available to us. And should we be willing to allow it, it will carry us to the ocean of all good, where we can be bathed and renewed in the waters of God, remembering the truth of who we are. And so it is. Thank you, my friends. Krista?